Coming up in this very busy hour, new reaction to the Supreme Court giving President Trump a major victory as he continues his efforts to put more allies on the federal bench. Also, what Democrats across the country can learn from the political earthquake in New York after Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani beat the odds and Andrew Cuomo. And HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is raising eyebrows again with his latest changes to U.S. vaccine policy. But we begin with President Trump celebrating a seismic Supreme Court ruling, even as he continues to try to reshape the federal judiciary. In a 6-3 ruling yesterday, the High Court's conservative supermajority narrowed the scope of nationwide injunctions imposed by judges, including the one that blocked Trump's ban on birthright citizenship. Attorney General Pam Bondi made it clear what the administration thinks about those judges who've tried to keep this administration in check.
No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. They turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. No longer. No longer. Not one district court judge can think they're an emperor over this administration and his executive powers.
In an effort to root out such so-called quote-unquote rogue judges, Trump is turning to some of his closest allies. After filling many of the top positions in his Department of Justice with his former attorneys, Trump is trying to get one of his former criminal defense attorneys and now Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove appointed to a lifetime federal judgeship. But it comes as a whistleblower this week described the lengths Bove was willing to go to make his boss happy, including defying court orders over Trump's deportation plans. Bove was grilled about this report during his Senate confirmation hearing on Wednesday.
In the complaint, it says Bove stated that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts "F you" and ignoring any such court order. Did you say anything of that kind in the meeting?
Senator, I have no recollection of saying anything of that kind. To the extent I
Wouldn't you recall, Mr. Bove, if you said or suggested during a meeting with Justice Department lawyers that maybe they should consider telling the court "F you"? It seems to me that would be something you'd remember, unless that's the kind of thing you say frequently.
Well, I've certainly said things encouraging litigators at the department to fight hard for valid positions that we have to take.
Such tart language so early in the morning. Joining us now, Catherine Christian, former assistant district attorney in Manhattan and an MSNBC legal analyst. Barrett Berger, former federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's offices for both the Eastern and Southern districts of New York, and NBC News justice reporter Ryan Riley. Thank you all very much for being here. Sorry, but I just let me go to the
Kirsten tickles Jonathan, apparently.
Okay, I know.
So
Barrett, I'm gonna start with you because, you know, we're in a situation where we've seen numerous incidents of judges finding this administration to have violated court orders, but there have been no consequences yet. So I guess the question is, would it even matter if Emil Bove actually told DOJ folks, said that DOJ would need to tell the courts to basically F off and ignore its orders on deportations?
I mean, that's what makes this so believable, right? You don't just have to believe the whistleblower, just look at the actions that DOJ has taken over the last few months. This is exactly what they've done. And it's interesting seeing this, you know, in connection with the Supreme Court decision that we got yesterday. I mean, what we're really seeing is saying we don't want to have respect for individual judges. We think individual judges have expanded their authority beyond what they're allowed to under the Constitution. And it's just this constant pushback, now both from the Supreme Court, but also from the Justice Department. This really seems to be the theme of this Justice Department and this administration.
Yeah, Ryan, off of that, the executive versus judicial push and pull is not new, right? Every president complains, especially over the last few years, about national injunctions by district courts. But the Supreme Court made it a lot easier for the executive branch to operate and kind of ignore what district court judges say. I want to play what President Trump said yesterday on the Supreme Court decision.
Well, this really brings back the Constitution. This is what it's all about, and this is really the opposite of that. Well, I think taking power away from these absolutely crazy radical left judges is a tremendous. This is such a big day. It only takes bad power away from judges. It really doesn't take. It takes bad power, sick power, and unfair power.
I think the judges would disagree with that, Ryan. But as you're talking to folks, how are they kind of taking in? I know we're like less than 24 hours into this, but how are they kind of thinking about navigating this new space?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have a really big repercussions, I think, outside of the birthright citizenship case and these nationwide injunctions, because that's how a lot of these have come about. There's already been some class action lawsuits filed as sort of a different strategy that individual groups have taken, but that's a little bit tougher. It's going to cause a lot of new litigation and cause, I think, a lot of uncertainty in some of these other cases that has been on pause, essentially, because of these injunctions. And it just makes it a little bit more piecemeal. And it, according to the dissenters in this case, is going to really undermine the rule of law. I think overall, what we've seen, the attacks and some of the clips you were playing from Pam Bondi there. I think there's just this disconnect between because of the bully pulpit that the White House has and, the Justice Department theoretically has, although this is a lot more political than it is, those sort of statements have been in the past. You wouldn't expect to see a Merrick Garland up there making those sort of really, strong, I guess, arguments as Pam Bondi has. The judges, as they've come under threats, can't really push back on this. That's outside of their wheelhouse. They're not sort of doing those news press conferences and attacking the executive, because that would be inappropriate.
Catherine, since Ryan brought up Attorney General Pam Bondi, I'm going to bring her up to you, but for something else that she said on Wednesday at a congressional hearing, when she was asked about whether she was aware that ICE officers are wearing masks when they're doing these deportation efforts. Watch this in response to Senator Gary Peters.
And Senator Peters, that's the first time that issue has come to me about them you're saying that law enforcement officers, when they cover their faces.
Right.
I do know they are being doxxed, as you said. They're being threatened. Their families are being threatened. I can assure you that if they're covering their faces now, it's to protect themselves. But they also want to protect all citizens.
She seemed real prepped for that, for someone who didn't even know.
Catherine, I'm sorry, but it strains credulity that the Attorney General of the United States did not know that ICE officers were covering their faces when we have all been watching recordings of this since basically Inauguration Day.
It's on video. We've seen it, everyone, unless she's not watching TV or social media or reads the newspapers. So it's there. She was careful with her words. She said, it hasn't been brought to my attention, which is very different than I've never seen it. So she was very careful with her words. And if they are being doxxed, well, that's a horrible thing. But you should not, if you're under arrest, you should be able to know who is arresting you. And not only are they wearing masks, some of them are not even identifying themselves. They don't have their shields out. They don't have ICE written across them. And we've had 2 Minnesota legislators shot by a false impersonation.
And Catherine, on that point, I mean, am I wrong in saying, don't they have to identify themselves?
Yes, law enforcement should. It's also for their protection. Right. Because if I'm someone in a state where I can legally carry a gun and someone comes up and tries to grab me, I might feel I have to defend myself and shoot them. So it's dangerous for the officer. It's dangerous for the person who is under arrest.
Barrett, we were remarking while Attorney General Pam Bondi was up there at the White House podium talking, or at least I was, that she was there at all, right? Ryan flicked at this a little bit, but she was sworn in the Oval Office, which is not exactly how it's happened in the past. She has often gone there. She's walked in with Donald Trump down the DOJ halls, showing him pictures of himself. when you think about, as people who care about the separation of the DOJ and the White House, how should other folks be thinking about this? It feels like, Donald Trump has said he wanted his lawyer, as the Attorney General. It seems like he may have gotten that, or am I reading too much into it?
I don't think you're reading too much into that. I mean, this is a very different model of the relationship between a president and the attorney general. I mean, historically, not only do you not see the attorney general necessarily going on weekend news shows to talk about things or giving briefings from the White House. Normally, you see much more of a separation, more independence from the Department of Justice. And ideally, that's what the president would want, right? You wouldn't want too close of a relationship, the physical proximity even, because you want to be able to say, no, they're independent, they make their decisions. Here, when the attorney general speaks, she sounds more like a spokesperson for the president than the chief law enforcement officer of the country, saying, these judges are getting in the way of his policies. Not, the judges are making legal decisions, not talking about the merits, but really making it about the personal relationship with the president and his policies.
And Catherine, why should people care, right? Why should normal, everyday people who are, can't afford eggs and are having a hard time getting babysitters, why should they care that there's a separation between them?
Because we want our prosecutors, and the Attorney General is the chief law enforcement prosecutor in the country, to prosecute without fear or favor. You want to believe that they're following the law and the facts. They're not being guided by politics, or they're going after a particular person because the president or someone else wants to get them, as opposed to prosecuting crime because a crime has been committed.
Well, Catherine Christian Barrett Berger, thank you so much for coming on.